Picture this scenario. You're driving down the interstate. It's a standard Tuesday, maybe mid-morning. Traffic is moving along. And up ahead, looming over the horizon, you see it. It's usually near one of those massive auto malls or maybe a stadium complex or, sometimes a really aggressive furniture outlet. A gigantic American flag.
The Giga flag, yeah, we've all seen them.
Right. And we aren't talking about the standard flag you see on a front porch or, outside a post office. We are talking skyscraper scale.
Oh, yeah.
40 feet by 80 feet.
Maybe even bigger.
It is absolutely dominating the skyline.
It's designed to.
It's waving in the wind. It looks majestic. It feels like a statement of immense, overwhelming patriotism. You look at that and you think, wow, that is impressive.
It's designed to elicit exactly that reaction. It relies on scale to create a sense of awe. It's what we call the sublime in aesthetics. Something so big it makes you feel small, and by extension it makes the thing it represents feel massive and powerful.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But here's the thing I want to challenge our listeners with today. I want you to mentally pull the car over.
Okay.
Get out. Walk across the vast expanse of that parking lot, all the way to the base of that massive steel pole. And then I want you to take out a pair of high-powered binoculars and really look at the fabric itself. Because if you zoom in on the red and white stripes of many of these mega flags, you're going to see something that might genuinely disturb you.
You're going to see the sky through the stripes.
Literally.
Yeah.
You're going to see that the fabric isn't solid. It has been intentionally sliced.
Or perforated.
Or it's covered in rows of perforated holes, almost like a football jersey or, a pasta strainer.
It's a mesh. That's what it is. It's an engineered surface designed to look like a flag from a distance, but function like a sieve up close.
And once you see those holes, once you realize that the field of the flag has been turned into Swiss cheese, you can't unsee it.
Yeah.
And that brings us to the topic of today's deep dive. We are analyzing a fascinating, I'd say slightly controversial, white paper titled Alteration of the United States Flag for Environmental Display.
This paper is a heavy hitter. It's not just about, textile manufacturing or industrial design. It's a collision between two very different systems of value.
Okay, what are they?
On one hand, you have engineering necessity, the pure physics of keeping a giant piece of cloth in the air without destroying things.
And on the other?
On the other hand, you have symbolic integrity, the rules, the philosophy, and what the paper calls the civil religion that defines what the flag actually is.
And the central question the paper poses is this. Can a national symbol remain symbolically intact if you deliberately poke holes in it just to make it convenient to fly? Or does the act of cutting the flag fundamentally change it from a sacred object into something else?
Into a prop. That's the argument, that by engineering it for survival, you might be killing it as a symbol.
So let's start with the basics before we get into heavy philosophy. Why are people slicing up the stars and stripes? I assume nobody's doing this out of malice. The facilities manager at the car dealership isn't thinking, I hate the flag, let me cut holes in it.
No, absolutely not. The intent is almost always preservation, or at least preservation of the display. You have to understand the physics involved here. When you scale a flag up to 40 by 80 feet, you aren't just dealing with a bigger tablecloth. You are dealing with a massive aerodynamic surface.
It's a sail.
It's a massive sail. And the wind load doesn't scale linearly. It scales exponentially.
So if you double the size, you don't just double the force.
Oh, it's way more than that. If you have a solid nylon sheet that size and a 40-mile-per-hour gust hits it broadside, the amount of force transferred to the halyard and the pole is astronomical.
How much are we talking?
We are talking thousands of pounds of force.
So it's a structural risk, a serious one.
It's catastrophic. If the flag is solid, one of three things happens in high wind. 1, the fabric shreds at the fly end. The whip effect destroys the hem in days, sometimes hours.
Okay.
2, the hardware fails. The clips snap, the cable breaks, and the flag flies away onto the highway, which is, a massive liability.
Or 3.
Or 3, and this is the nightmare scenario for the engineers, the pole itself fails.
You could snap a steel pole with a piece of cloth.
You can buckle it, or you can shear the foundation bolts right off. So the manufacturers looked at this problem, and they applied fluid dynamics. They realized, we need to reduce the drag coefficient. And how do you reduce drag on a flat surface?
You let the air go through it.
Exactly. You porositize the surface, that's the term they use. You cut distinct slits, usually in a smile or a U shape, or you use a mesh weave.
And that lets the wind bleed through.
It lets the wind bleed through the fabric rather than pushing against it. It drops the wind load significantly. It increases the longevity of the product.
Longevity of the product. That's such a very commercial phrase for a national symbol.
But that is the mindset. To the manufacturer, this is a product that needs to last more than 3 weeks so the customer doesn't complain. If I sell you a $5,000 flag and it shreds in a month, you're angry.
Right.
If I sell you a perforated flag that lasts 6 months, you're happy. It's just business logic.
So from a purely utilitarian engineering standpoint, the holes are a brilliant solution. They solve the physics problem.
100%. If the flag were just a banner advertising 0% APR financing or a grand opening sign, we wouldn't be having this conversation.
It's a great innovation.
Smart engineering. But the flag isn't a banner. And this is where the paper shifts gears. It argues that you cannot treat the U.S. flag purely as a physical object subject to physical laws. You have to treat it as a symbol subject to symbolic laws.
This is the core of our deep dive. The paper uses something called normative symbolic analysis, which sounds academic, I know, but it's actually really practical.
It is.
It breaks this down into 4 pillars: the law, the tradition, the meaning, and the language of symbols.
Right. It's saying, okay, the engineers have had their say, they've solved their problem, now let's ask the lawyers, the sociologists, the historians, and the semioticians.
Let's start with pillar 1, the law, because we actually have a federal law about the flag code.
Title 4 of the United States Code. Yep, it's the rule book. Now, I have to clarify this immediately because listeners always asked. The flag code is advisory for civilians.
Meaning the flag police aren't going to kick down my door if I hang my flag backwards.
Correct. There are no criminal penalties. The Supreme Court has ruled multiple times that desecrating the flag is protected free speech. However,
There's a but.
there's a big but. The flag code is the normative baseline. It is the codified standard of what the country agrees constitutes respect. It tells us what the correct ritual looks like.
So what does the code say about, well, poking holes in the flag?
It's what it doesn't say. That's so interesting. The code is incredibly detailed about how to handle the flag.
Oh, it is.
It talks about not letting it touch the ground. It talks about not using it for advertising, not wearing it as clothing. But the most relevant section is Section 8, which is all about the physical condition of the flag.
Section 8K, right. I looked it up.
Yes. It states, and I'm paraphrasing slightly, the flag, when it is in such condition that it is no longer a fitting emblem for display, should be destroyed in a dignified way, preferably by burning.
Okay, let's parse that for us. No longer a fitting emblem.
The logic of the law is binary. It's very clear. The flag is either fit or unfit. There's no in between.
Right.
If it is fit, you fly it. If it is unfit, if it's torn, faded, or tattered, you retire it. You take it down and you ceremonially burn it or bury it.
There's no fix-it phase. No patch-it-up section.
There is no modification phase. The code never, ever suggests if the flag is tearing, cut some vents in it to help, or if the wind is too strong, redesign the flag. The code assumes the design of the flag is fixed. It is immutable. The variable is the display. If the flag can't survive the display, the code implies you stop the display, not that you change the flag.
So the law prioritizes the integrity of the object over the persistence of the display.
That is a perfect summary. The engineer says the display must go on, so I will alter the flag. The code says the flag must remain whole, so if necessary, the display must stop. 2 totally different worldviews.
This leads us into the second part of Pillar 1, which I found fascinating. This concept of civil religion. This is a term from sociology, right? Robert Bellah.
Robert Bellah, 1967, a seminal article called Civil Religion in America. Bellah argued that the U.S. is unique. We don't have a shared ethnicity, not really. We don't have a state church.
Right.
So what binds us together? He argued we have a non-sectarian civil religion with its own theology, its own rituals, its own sacred texts.
Oh, we have our own Saints Washington, Lincoln, our own scriptures, the Constitution, the Declaration of Independence.
And our own sacred icons. And the flag is the totem. It is the central sacred object of the tribe.
Okay, so if the flag was a sacred object, like a religious icon,
Yeah.
what are the rules?
Well, how does any religion keep its symbols sacred? Bellah's answer is through disciplined ritual repetition.
Disciplined ritual repetition. That sounds very strict.
It has to be. Think about a church service or any religious ceremony. You say the same prayers in the same order every week. You use the same chalice. You wear the same vestments. Why?
It's tradition. It's comfort.
It's more than that. The repetition protects the meaning. If the priest came out one week and said, hey, this silver chalice is really heavy and hard to clean, so from now on, I'm going to use this plastic solo cup for communion, what happens?
It ruins the vibe, it breaks the spell, it feels cheap.
It breaks the sacredness, it turns the ritual into something profane, something common. It prioritizes convenience, the weight of the cup, over the symbolic weight of the object.
And the paper argues this is exactly what happens with the perforated flag.
Precisely. The source references other scholars, Philip Gorski and Catherine Albanese. They argue that the continuity of the American nation relies on institutionalized restraint.
Institutionalized restraint.
That means doing things the hard way because it's the right way, the prescribed way.
Restraint. That is fascinating because when I look at a 40-foot flag, restraint is the last word that comes to my mind.
Right.
It looks like excess. It looks like more is better.
And that is the tension. We have shifted from a culture of restraint, where the flag is treated with quiet dignity, to a culture of spectacle. But the civil religion argument is that the power of the flag doesn't come from its size. It comes from its set-apartness. It comes from the fact that we agree to treat it differently than we treat a banner for a used car sale.
So if we start treating the flag like a banner by cutting holes in it so it flies better, we are, degrading the civil religion?
In the language of the theory, we are committing sacrilege. We are saying this object is not immutable, this object is adjustable, and once the totem becomes adjustable, it loses its unifying power.
That's a heavy charge. But let's play devil's advocate for a second. Does the average person driving by really see it that way? Or is this just academics overthinking a piece of cloth?
That's a fair pushback, and I think most people don't consciously think about it. They just see red, white, and blue. But that brings us to pillar 2. Semiotics. This is the science of meaning. And this explains why you feel weird when you look closely at those holes, even if you can't articulate it.
Okay, semiotics. Ferdinand de Saussure, break this down for us.
Okay, so Saussure, a linguist, said every sign has 2 parts, the signifier and the signified.
Signifier, signified.
The signifier is the physical thing, the sound of a word, the ink on paper, or in this case, the cloth on the pole, the red, white, and blue fabric.
And the signified.
The signified is the concept liberty, the republic, USA, the nation, the idea in your head.
Okay, so cloth equals signifier. Freedom equals signified. Got it.
Right. Now, Saussure argued that the connection between them, while arbitrary at first, is stabilized by the form of the signifier. If you change the physical form, you risk destabilizing the meaning.
Give me a non-flag example of that.
Think about a wedding ring. A wedding ring is a continuous circle of precious metal. That unbroken form, the circle, signifies eternity and value.
Okay.
If you took a wedding ring, cut it in half, and connected the 2 halves with a rubber band because, it's more comfortable when my finger swells, does it still signify the same thing?
No, absolutely not. It signifies that you're cheap or that you don't care about the symbolism. The form is broken.
Exactly. The form carries the meaning. Now look at the flag. The paper talks about the fragmentation of the field.
The field being the blue canton with the stars and the red and white stripes.
Yes. In heraldry, which is the ancestor of flag design, the field is a solid, continuous area. It represents unity, the union. When you perforate the flag, you are literally fragmenting the field. You are introducing gaps. You are breaking the continuity of the lines of the stripes.
So logically, if the flag represents the nation, and you fragment the flag,
you are visually representing a fragmented nation. A nation full of holes. A broken union.
ouch, that's a powerful visual.
And it gets deeper with another sociologist, Emil Durkheim. We mentioned him briefly, but he's crucial here. He distinguished between the sacred and the profane.
Sacred versus profane. And this isn't just religious versus bad words, right?
No, not at all. For Durkheim, sacred means things that are set apart and protected by prohibitions. Things you cannot do to them. You cannot burn the Bible for warmth. You cannot step on the altar with muddy shoes.
Okay, things that have special rules.
And profane means common utilitarian things. A hammer, a napkin, a tarp. Everyday objects.
Profane things are tools.
And tools are adaptable. They are meant to be changed. If your hammer isn't working, you modify it. If your tarp is too big for the job, you cut it down to size.
Okay, I think I see where this is going.
The moment you cut the flag to make it work better in the wind, you have recategorized it. You have moved it from the sacred box to the profane box.
You've turned it from a sacred icon into a tool.
You've turned it into an engineered surface. You've said, the function of this object, which is staying on the pole, is more important than the form of this object. That is a utilitarian logic, not a sacred logic.
So the holes are proof that the owner, whether they know it or not, views the flag as a decoration, not as a totem.
Consciously or not, yes. Their actions reveal that they have prioritized the physics over the metaphysics.
Let's move to Pillar 3, because I think this offers the starkest contrast. The military model. The paper cites actual drill manuals.
It does. It cites Drill Master, TC 321.5, MCO 5060.2M. The military is the institutional custodian of the sacred view. For them, the flag, which they call the colors, is not a decoration. It is the living soul of the unit.
So how does the military handle high wind? Surely they have ceremonies in bad weather. I've seen them.
They do. But the protocol is absolutely rigid. If the wind is high, they have two choices. One, they struggle through it. You'll see the color guard, these young soldiers physically fighting the wind to maintain their bearing and keep the flag from touching the ground.
And the struggle itself is part of the honor.
Yes, it shows dedication. But they don't switch to the mesh flag.
No windy day version.
Never. It doesn't exist in the military supply system. Option 2. If the weather is truly dangerous, if there's a risk to personnel or the colors, they cancel the outdoor ceremony.
They don't do it.
They don't do it. Or they move it indoors. They will always, always choose to have no flag display rather than a compromised one.
So they would rather have no flag display than a compromised flag display.
That is the key takeaway from the military model. Symbolic integrity supersedes environmental persistence. The military understands that if you start making exceptions, oh, let's use the holy flag today, you erode the discipline. And without discipline, the symbol means nothing.
It's interesting to compare this to other countries. The paper looked at the UK, Canada, Germany. Is this giga flag with holes thing happening everywhere?
No. The paper is pretty clear on this. It is a uniquely American phenomenon.
Really?
Yes. Look at the UK. The Union Jack has very specific, legally mandated ratios. If you are flying a flag in a high wind zone, like the Scottish Highlands, the official guidance is lower the flag.
Just take it down.
Take it down. Don't invent a wheeled see-through version of the Union Jack with slits in it. Just respect the weather.
What about Canada?
Canada focuses on reinforced materials. They'll use a heavier denier nylon, or they will add 6 or 8 rows of stitching on the fly end to prevent fraying. They make the flag tougher.
But they don't cut it.
But they never violate the image. They don't cut the maple leaf.
So the global standard seems to be engineer the strength of the material or engineer a stronger pole, but do not engineer the symbol itself.
That's it. The U.S. trend is an outlier. And the paper argues it's driven by our specific cultural mix of intense commercialism and performative patriotism. We want the biggest flag possible, and if we have to break the ancient rules of heraldry to get it, we will.
Which brings us to what I think is the psychological core of the paper. The author coins a phrase that I find really, really sticky: honor by dishonor.
It's a fantastic phrase. It's a paradox.
It is. It's the fallacy that you can honor the nation by violating the established standards of the nation. Break that down for us. How does that logic work in the owner's head, the person who buys this flag?
Okay, so the owner thinks something like this. I want to show maximum respect. How do I do that? I will fly the biggest flag possible, 80 feet, 100 feet, the biggest one on the interstate.
Right. Bigness is the goal.
But wait, physics says an 80-foot flag will tear itself to shreds, so I will cut holes in it to solve that problem. But look, it's still 80 feet. Look how much I love America.
They are equating size with patriotism.
Yes, and they are equating spectacle with respect. But the paper argues this is a category error. Respect doesn't come from magnitude. It comes from conformity to the ritual, from the discipline.
It's like screaming a prayer in church. Just because you scream it louder than anyone else doesn't mean you are more pious.
In fact, screaming it is probably disrespectful. It draws attention to you and your performance, not to the prayer itself. And this connects perfectly to the prop metaphor the paper uses.
This was a great visual for me. Explain the prop versus the emblem.
Okay. In a dignified, traditional display, the hierarchy is clear. The flag is the master. The display is the servant.
Okay.
You build the pole to suit the flag. You choose the location to honor the flag. If the wind is too high, the flag's integrity commands you to take it down.
The flag is the boss.
The flag is the boss. But with the perforated Viga flag, the hierarchy flips. The master is the display. You want the effect of a giant flag to sell cars or hype up a football crowd. That's the goal. But the wind is a problem for your goal. So you alter the flag. You subjugate the flag to the needs of the display.
The flag becomes a prop in a performance.
Exactly. The goal isn't honor the nation. The goal is create a patriotic atmosphere. And the flag is just a texture map, a piece of scenery used to achieve that atmosphere.
Wow. That is a devastating critique when you put it that way. It frames these displays not as super patriotic, but as, well, as cynical, as
It-
performative.
It's performative patriotism. And the scholar Michael Billig has a term for this: banal nationalism, the constant, unthinking background flagging of the environment.
Banal nationalism.
And when you combine banal nationalism with market forces, you get commodification.
The flag becomes a product, and products by their nature are customizable.
Right. If you go to a flag manufacturer and you say, I need a 50-foot flag that won't rip in my high wind area, a principled manufacturer following the symbolic logic might say, that's not physically possible without altering the design, so we suggest a smaller 20-foot flag instead.
But the competitor down the street says,
The competitor says, sure, I'll do it. I'll slice it up for you. I'll make it out of mesh. That'll be $8,000, please. The market rewards the one who says yes to the spectacle, not the one who says no for the sake of dignity.
and this creates a slippery slope. The paper mentions this risk. If we accept holes for wind resistance, what's next?
That's the danger. It's what's called the normalization of deviation. Once you accept that the flag's fundamental design is negotiable based on environmental factors, where do you draw the line?
Give me a hypothetical.
Okay, imagine a flag flying in a city with a lot of industrial smog, and a facilities manager says, you know, the white stripes get dirty really fast, it looks bad and costs money to clean. Let's make them light gray instead. It's more practical.
Or, red is a color that's hard for some people to see at night. Let's make it neon pink for better visibility.
Exactly. If your guiding logic is engineering necessity trumps symbolic integrity, then the neon pink flag is justifiable. It performs better. But obviously, every single one of us would look at that and say, that's not the flag.
So the holes are just the thin end of the wedge.
They are the first, most subtle step. They are the moment we decided the physical performance of the object matters more than the visual integrity of the symbol.
So we've diagnosed the problem pretty thoroughly here. We have sliced up flags, we have confused patriotism with spectacle, and we have a potential slippery slope. What do we do? The paper actually has a policy implications section. It doesn't just complain. It offers some concrete solutions.
It does. It talks about stewardship. Since the law is advisory, it's toothless, so the culture has to step in. And the paper identifies 3 groups who need to become better stewards.
Okay, group 1, the manufacturers.
They are the gatekeepers. They aren't just selling textiles, they're printing the national emblem. The paper suggests the industry should establish its own voluntary standards, a code of ethics.
Like we, the undersigned flag makers, do not produce perforated or otherwise altered flags. Period.
Exactly. It's a bold ask. You're asking a business to turn down money for the sake of a principle.
It is.
But they could reframe it. They could push the alternative. Reinforce technology. Look at the sailing industry. We have high-tech sailcloths like Kevlar and carbon fiber laminates that can withstand hurricane forces. Why are we making giant flags out of cheap nylon and then cutting holes in them? Use better materials.
So the answer is innovation. Charge more for a flag that's strong enough not to need holes.
Exactly. Innovation, not mutilation. That should be the industry's motto.
Okay, group 2, the
Sure.
buyers. The cities, the stadiums, the big government agencies.
Procurement guidelines. This is probably the most practical and immediate fix. If the City of Dallas or the Department of Veterans Affairs puts out a bid for a massive flag display, the contract should explicitly say, the flag must be of solid field construction. No perforations, slits, or mesh materials will be accepted.
If the buyer says, I won't buy it if it has holes, the factory stops making it with holes.
It's simple supply and demand, but the buyers need to be educated. Most facilities managers, they don't know about semiotics or civil religion. They just know they don't want to replace a shredded $5,000 flag every month.
Which leads to group 3, us, the public, civic education.
We need to relearn the core idea that safety justifies removal, not modification.
That's the bumper sticker for this whole deep dive. Say that again.
Safety justifies removal, not modification. If it is too windy to fly the flag safely, the respectful act is to take it down. The disrespectful act is to mutilate it so you can keep it up no matter what.
It's about learning to be okay with an empty pole on a stormy day.
Yes. An empty pole during a storm speaks to the integrity of the standard. It says, we value the flag too much to let it be destroyed by the elements. A perforated flag waving in that same storm says, we don't care about the flag's form, we just want the colors up there at all costs.
This whole conversation has completely changed how I'm going to look at these displays.
Hmm.
I used to be the guy driving by saying, wow, look at that big flag.
Hmm.
Now I'm going to be the guy squinting at it, looking for the daylight between the stripes.
You will become a flag snob. But it's a good kind of snobbery. It's an awareness of the glitch in the symbolic matrix.
It really comes down to that word you used much earlier, boundaries.
That's it. National symbols don't survive just because they are printed on indestructible material. They survive because a community agrees over generations to treat them as set apart. We decide collectively that this particular pattern of stars and stripes is sacred.
And preserving that sacredness, that set-apartness, requires work.
It requires discipline. It requires saying no. No to convenience. No to the easy engineering fix. No to the cheap spectacle that feels good for a moment but degrades the meaning in the long run.
It reminds me of the military concept we talked about. The discipline is the honor. The struggle is the respect.
The paper ends with a really powerful thought along those lines. It says the long-term strength of the flag isn't about how long it can stay airborne in a hurricane. It's not about physical durability at all.
It's about cultural durability.
Exactly. Does the nation have the collective discipline to preserve the form of its most important symbol? If we lose the discipline to keep the symbol whole, the paper implies, we lose something much more important than just a piece of cloth. We lose a piece of the shared agreement of what the nation is.
That is a heavy, heavy thought. We are trading the integrity of the national symbol for the durability of a commercial decoration.
That's the trade-off. And the paper argues it's a very bad deal.
Well, listeners, next time you are driving past that mega dealership or that stadium, take a closer look. If you can, pull over, use the binoculars on your phone camera, and ask yourself, is that a flag? Or is that an engineered surface acting as a prop?
The silence of the empty pole on a windy day versus the noise of the tattered mesh.
I want to leave you with one final provocation to chew on today, something that builds on all this. We often assume that something is better than nothing, that a compromised flag with holes in it is better than no flag at all. But based on what we've dug into today, is that true? If the only way you can fly a flag is by fundamentally compromising its nature, maybe the most patriotic, most respectful thing you can do is leave a halyard empty. Because the emptiness proves you know the rules, and the holes prove you're willing to break them. Which one actually honors the country more?
That's the question.
Thanks for diving deep with us. Keep looking closer.
See you next time.